Hey everyone, and welcome back to another roundup. So, Sonic is booming, Remedy have plans for the future, Half-Life has a release date, and we've got the wild situation of pricing, building, and selling millions upon millions of consoles and the issues Sony are having, plus a bunch more. Now, if you're new here and you want 6 game industry news and analysis videos per week, hit that sub button. If you want to help us out, like for that algorithm, and if you want to check out what our game studio is doing, you can check out our site and mailing list down below. And with that, thanks, and let's get going. After a torrent of memes and a much-needed redesign, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie finally released on Friday. And it seems to be, a movie that's got decent fan service, a bit of a core to it with its characters, but otherwise, doesn't really seem to be that remarkable, outside of its attachment to an established IP and the broader story of the movie coming into the world. Hell, I'd almost say that it had an anti-Kickstarter, and bear with me, right? So, the way a Kickstarter can happen that can really onboard people onto a project, communicate what the project is to them, get them excited, get them invested. I think this drama sort of had the same effect. People tore the original design to shreds. That gained the movie massive notoriety, and it paved the way for a very strong comeback story with the redone design of Sonic. And yes, credit to them for listening, of course. The design is way better than it was, but it's just interesting how this all worked so well in the studio's favor. And as much as I'm sure that part of this is indeed doing right by the fans, I think it's also very clear that the old design just was horrible and would not have meshed with general audiences, so I think the main decision here is of course a financial one, where the hit that the bad design of the movie originally would have had, that just would have been too much of a hit to its box office take, which meant that it was worth investing more money in getting the design better. And if we're going to hop over to game movie analysis mode, well, so far it has all paid off. It brought in $57 million in the US and $100 million on its opening weekend, which is pretty good. That smashes the video game movie opening record that was held by last year's Detective Pikachu, which brought in $54 million in its first few days. Now, interestingly, Detective Pikachu went on to make $433 million worldwide during its time in theaters, and that's actually just behind Legendary's Warcraft, which took in $439 internationally. Now, Warcraft was propelled through a very strong showing in China. I've got to imagine that Sonic will be far more of a domestic US hit, and of course the coronavirus has shut down quite a bit of China, at least based on the current numbers. You've got, I think, 61.9% of Sonic's earnings coming from the US, but of course it's not opened in China, Russia, or Japan yet. Overall, what's the core lesson here? I think it's one that's pretty simple. If you're making something for an audience, think about that audience. It's not rocket science, it's really pretty simple, and it's remarkable that the initial design was so off the mark. And then next, I think we've got some pretty good news for just games in general. So Remedy published their earnings report last week, and it's given us a little bit of an insight into what the studio's actually up to. Now, in addition to their work developing the upcoming shooter Crossfire X's single-player campaign, which, what an interesting situation Crossfire is there, but Remedy currently have 4 projects in the works. So there are 2 paid expansions for Control that are due to release this year, and Remedy actually noted that the low marketing budget of that game may have impacted its initial sales, but the Control has actually performed excellently since its launch. And yes, I think that does go to show here that if quality is there and the size of your initial player base is, large enough to actually get the ball rolling, then yeah, word of mouth will do the heavy lifting and it will do wonders for you. Then, less interestingly for me, they are also working on a live service multiplayer project, and it is codenamed Vanguard. It's got a 15-person team right now, and they are currently aiming to basically, it's a bit weird, combine long-term multiplayer experiences with the studio's own identity. As to what that means, I've got absolutely no idea, and I'd say right now it pretty much means nothing. It's clearly though a project that's some time off, and in a similar vein to that, they've got another title that's in pre-production. Now, I think Control DLC is very good. I think that's the type of game where people play it, they just want some more, so some DLC that gives them more makes a lot of sense. But it also sets up Control as being very strong for the next gen, I would say, because you could sell Control and its expansions and a visual upgrade as, a remastered edition or something like that. Kind of like what happened with the PS4 a lot. I think that would make perfect financial sense. And yeah, I think it just goes to show, make something good and unique. This sort of era of lower budget games like this, like Senua, I think that's a very good thing to be seeing indeed. It's maybe a case where we actually see that modern game engines, yes, they can lead to massively bloated production costs by increasing production values, but also they seemingly can be used to make very cost-controlled, high-quality games, and that's something we need a lot more of. Next though, Sony may have a problem on their hands because reports are suggesting that scarce components have pushed the PS5's manufacturing costs to $450 per unit. Now, the PS4 retailed at $399 on its release in 2013, and it cost an estimated $281 per unit to manufacture. Now, if this was to all carry forward, we've seen analysts suggest that the PS5's retail price might have to be at least $470 to balance out the unit cost increases. Of course, though, that's just production cost. A lot more goes into actually getting you a PS5 than just building it. Logistics, warranties, distributors, retail, there's a lot of pieces of the pie there. Now, if that $470 price point did exist, it could feel expensive to people. I mean, the PS4 Pro is currently their most expensive machine. I think it's $399, but you can often get it on sale or in a pretty good bundle. Now, I should also note that the $399 in 2013's dollars for the PS4, that's equivalent to $441 in today's dollars because of inflation, so $470 wouldn't be overly crazy there. And it's also true that a part of a bullet was dodged anyway because of the trade war pretty much de-escalating, at least within the realms of consoles, so there's tariffs that aren't going to be happening. Now, overall, it might spell a bit of difficulty or interest in the game of chicken that Sony and Microsoft are playing. Like, Sony typically finalized the console's price in February of its release year before moving on to, mass production in spring through summer and then, selling it. Now, as of right now, everything's under wraps. Console manufacturers are usually selling on razor-thin margins or even at a loss. And the real money, of course, lies in the software sales, the add-ons like your premium online subscriptions like PS Plus and Xbox Game Pass, Ultimate and Xbox Live Gold, all those things. So it's an interesting situation. The main focus for Sony going forward, according to their CFO, is to ensure that the company can meet the demand of the PS5 while keeping the console's bill of materials under control, which absolutely is going to be important for them. Now, what is interesting here, right, is if the money is in the platform and the services, you really can see Microsoft's point in focusing on platform and services and really, yes, they're going to be pushing their next generation of consoles, but seemingly not as hard as Sony. It does seem like Microsoft's plan just involves a larger roster of Xbox hardware and then every PC that exists. So certainly, if you want to be in the business of having Xbox, a cross-device platform, to get your 30%, then they could be onto a winner. But that said, Sony's exclusives are such a powerful selling point that, well, it certainly will be an interesting race. Then really the final angle of interest for this is what I alluded to earlier. It's that game of chicken where, Microsoft, they want to price their console. If they knew what Sony were going for, that would probably help them. So the two companies are just going to be playing chicken to actually see who will go first, who will announce that price. And overall, in terms of pricing, it'll certainly be interesting to see if we're going for more expensive consoles this time around. I've got to wonder that, if there is a lot of cross-compatibility and things like that, if the companies will be a bit more willing to go with a more expensive console with better hardware that will actually, last them a bit more into the future. Because even if they plan to have, an Xbox Series X and then, 3 different SKUs of that eventually with different power levels, they're still going to be limited to what can run on the base SKU. So, your base Xbox One for right now. And that means that if that is a part of their longer term plan, they really will want that base unit to have a good amount of future-proofness in it. So yes, if they can just get away with a slightly more expensive price and bill of materials and a little bit better quality and future-proofness, I've got to imagine they probably will try to do that. And then next up, we've got a follow-on from last week's stories on Activision Blizzard pulling out from NVIDIA GeForce. Now, there was a lot of speculation at the time around the reasoning for this, with NVIDIA now releasing a statement. Well, that's kind of interesting because the statement says that it was a, quote, misunderstanding. So apparently, right, because Activision Blizzard participated in the GeForce Now beta test, NVIDIA just assumed that that agreement would extend to GeForce Now's actual full launch. That wasn't the case, and NVIDIA say that that's why the games had to be removed. But they did say that, they'll work to see if they can get them back. But I've got to wonder, is this just PR speak? I mean, Activision Blizzard can't really do like the GeForce Now thing because they've got that Google deal, and that Google deal is worth $160 million. So that's going to be an awkward situation. But at the same time, you know, Activision Blizzard and NVIDIA, they've got to be able to work with each other. And if you look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare, what did you see slapped absolutely everywhere? NVIDIA RTX. So personally, my belief is that NVIDIA are partially, they're partially right here, but I really do think that they would really like Activision Blizzard games on, but they understand the agreement, but at the same time don't want to burn any bridges because, well, having NVIDIA support is going to be pretty darn useful if RTX was like one of the main, at least one of the selling angles of Modern Warfare, and could be a selling point going into the future. And then next we've got two interesting stories to round off today's video. So HalfLife Alyx has finally got a release date. It's the poster child for VR, and I mean, basically that's what I think, and March 23rd is the release date, which actually means that March and actually that 1 week are just going to be insane for the amount of games coming out. So we've known of a March release since the game's reveal, but now we actually have the date confirmed. It's only 5 weeks away. I'll disappear for a weekend. I'll get you a full review of that game. I have loved VR since my Oculus Rift DK2, and it's just insane how far this field has came. And it's also nice to see that Half-Life is doing this. Alyx really is now part of a 3-game tradition, with each one of those games moving our medium forward in a different way, which is pretty darn important, and I do commend Valve in having that focus. Next up, and finally though, it's time to get your detective hats on, because with the new generation of consoles on the way, well, hardware sales have been slowing down. But Microsoft has got something to smile about, because the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller has been the fastest selling gaming accessory for 3 months in a row. It costs £160, probably what, $200, something like that? I mean, that's nearly the same price as some of the Xbox One bundles that happened over the Christmas period, and that's just for a controller. But that said, it's a mighty controller. I've got one in the office, and it's definitely priced at a premium. I don't think it's worth $160, but it is an incredible controller. So to me, it's actually just wild that it's selling so well at that price tag. And just to get a bit more clarity in that, well, according to NPD Group, the Elite Series 2 is the 5th fastest selling video game accessory in US history. Now, if you're wondering, that sits behind the 2 Xbox 360 Kinect bundles, the PS4's DualShock 4, and the Wii Motion Plus remote bundle, which is just insane there. And also, I'd say that Microsoft's commitment to compatibility I think that will have no doubt done wonders for sales. I think it's hard to believe that the Elite Series 2 would have overcome the hardware slump if it weren't for people knowing that, it would be compatible with the new hardware, and that really investing in that controller would, stand to the future. Now, it is interesting. I think it ties into that previous Sony story where really, yes, it is not about selling consoles, it's about platforms and accessories, right? You probably make more money selling one of these controllers than you do selling a new console. And certainly, it's interesting how Microsoft are positioning things. This is a controller that's already quite friendly for PC use as well, so it just goes to show that by spreading their platform and then making accessories branded to work with that platform, well, again, it's Microsoft just playing their game fairly well. And I think it's interesting that Sony, with such a strong install base of consoles, have not decided to go with some sort of very premium controller add-on. But anyway, that's it for this video. So let me know what you think about all the stories we've talked about today. And Wilson, we will have a Wilson video, maybe up today, maybe tomorrow, but stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.